Hey everybody, it's Mama Mary Homeschool. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some strategies for teaching kids in different ages and grade levels. So right now we've got an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and we're teaching the grade levels 3rd grade, 1st grade, and preschool. So if you need some tips on how to toggle between different levels, stick around, this video is for you. All right, so my first strategy is decide which subjects you can teach the kids together. So we have science and social studies that I teach all the kids together. Our 3-year-old kind of joins in when he feels like it, and then he gets distracted, and I continue to teach the 5-year-old and the 8-year-old. But combining science and social studies reduces the amount of time I have to teach. It reduces the amount of time we're doing school, all together. And it reduces the amount of individual lesson plans that I have to make, which is a win. Okay, and then we also do the kind of special subjects combined. So that would be art, music, health, and PE. So the subjects that they're doing independently, meaning they're on different levels from each other, are math, reading, writing, and grammar. So really language arts and math. So combining subjects has been really helpful, and there are even curriculums out there that are built to do this. So if you're interested in combining subjects for your kids, look for curriculum that is built to do this, and that's a really helpful way to kind of reduce the amount of time you have to figure out what to teach each kid independently. The second strategy that I'll tell you is decide what your kids can do independently. And this really can only happen once your kid is old enough to read instructions and do the task by themselves. Or maybe if you're using an online curriculum where there's an instructional video, maybe they can do it a little bit earlier. But I have found this is really the first year that I can have one of my kids doing something independently, and that's my 8-year-old. So this took a little bit longer than I thought it would. I thought maybe by even 1st grade, she might be able to do some tasks on her own. But I have found, at least for the younger ages, kindergarten through 2nd grade, they require a lot of involvement from me. So don't expect too much independent learning before 3rd grade. That's my recommendation. But once my kid hit 3rd grade, she's able to read instructions, have a checklist of what she's supposed to be doing while I'm teaching the 1st grader. And then she's also doing a math curriculum online, so she can watch the instructional video and then do a set of questions to practice. Now, she does still have questions, and I'll get interrupted every once in a while for her to be like, hey, I need help with this thing or that thing. But for the most part, she's able to, do her reading on her own, and then we can talk about it when I'm available. And then she's able to do her math on her own with the online curriculum. So that's really helpful. So decide what your kids can do independently and pick curriculum on purpose where okay, I know my kid will stay focused with this curriculum and can do it independently. All right, the third strategy that I have for you is decide if you're going to toggle between your students or if you're going to teach one kid at a time. And what I mean by that is maybe you'll do, a morning time block where you teach one student and an afternoon time block where you teach the next student. Or you can switch between them and maybe do math with one student and then math with the next student. Language arts with one student, language arts with the next student. You get the idea. I kind of do whatever the day brings. So sometimes it works really well for me to multitask and be like, all right, I'll answer this question on math for you and then continue to do a math lesson for another student. And some days my kids require me to be really just focused on them for a little bit. So for this one, for our family, I've had to play this by ear. If my kid is really just like, hey, I need you to sit with me while I do this, even if they're doing it mostly independently, I try to honor that as much as I can and sit with them and encourage them and keep them going, keep them focused on one thing at a time, and then focus on the next student and do all of their subjects. I will say doing one student at a time makes our school day longer. So if I need an efficient school day, if we've got, plans in the afternoon or something that I need to accomplish in the afternoon, I'm going to toggle between each student and be multitasking. It's a little bit more how do I say this? It can feel a little bit more chaotic because I have to have my brain in 2 different grades and, multiple different subjects at a time. But it does mean that we can get school done in, a much shorter amount of time. So this requires you to really know yourself, like how much multitasking can you handle, and also know your students. How much involvement are they going to need from you? And I will say this again, I know that I said this with the last tip that I gave, but the younger ages, don't expect them to be able to like finish their math page while you work with someone else. Like they really need you to sit with them. At least my kids have really needed me to sit with them, encourage them along. Even if something they know how to do, they still need me to be with them while they do it. So again, know your kids, know yourself, but decide if you're going to do one student and all of their subjects, and then the next student and all of their subjects, or if you're going to be multitasking and toggling between each student. Okay, the fourth thing you're gonna wanna think about is your school area setup. So this kind of ties in with the last tip because your area setup is gonna depend on whether or not you're teaching one student at a time and your other kids are gonna be kind of occupying themselves doing something else, or if you're gonna be, toggling between your students. So there's a few different ways you can do this. The setup that's working for us right now is that each of my older kids has their own desk. So the first grader has a desk and the third grader has a desk. They are not right next to each other because I know my kids and I know that they'll start to, distract each other. So their desks are facing in different directions, but they each have their own learning area, okay? And then the 3-year-old has a little like circle mat that I use for his preschool learning. Does he stay on the circle mat? Absolutely not. But at least he has his own area and doesn't feel left out. Right now, what I'm doing most of the time is toggling between the students because I know my 3-year-old's attention span is going to be pretty short. So I'll do something quick with him and then I'll get the 3rd grader going on her independent work. And then I can focus on the 1st grader and do some work with her. Another setup that works really well, especially when we're doing combined subjects, is just sitting at the table. So regular kitchen table, dining table, whatever. And the kids are just sitting around the table. They each have, their own worksheets or things that they're doing. And I'm at the table also teaching. I know a lot of families do all their school at the table. I've tried this and it didn't work for us because they distract each other, okay? So I need them to be a little bit more separate. But a lot of people really like the communal feeling of everybody learning at the table at the same time. All right, the 5th and final strategy that I will share with you today is pace your learners so that you have a cohesive end time. This is really optional, but for the peace of my family, if one kid is done with school and then another kid is still working, I know, just there's going to be so much whining. There's going to be so much, oh, well, why does she get to go play when I'm still working? So I pace them, okay? And what this looks like for us is my 3rd grader, she's got a little bit more work to do because she's older, 3rd grade, you're doing more subjects, you're doing, like I've beefed up her English language arts curriculum this year. So I might start her on something before I start the school with the other kids. And here's what I mean by this. I'm finishing up the breakfast dishes and I'll tell the 3rd grader, hey, go grab your book and start your 30 minutes of reading now, and so that's out of the way. And that gives me kind of a head start so that, math and reading with my 1st grader is going to take a shorter amount of time, but will end at the same time. If you're teaching students of multiple different ages and grades, drop your tips in the comments below so we can all help each other out. I hope that all these tips and strategies for teaching multiple students at different levels was helpful. I was really worried last year when it was our first year having 2 official students that it was going to double the amount of time that we were doing school or just require an insane amount of multitasking for me. And it turned out that, there were some really fun aspects of having more than one learner. One is, the younger kid now feels like they're in the big kid zone and they're included and they have their own school to do. And then another thing was the combined subjects. Actually, it had there was more energy and I felt a little more inspired when I was teaching more than one kid. There's more interaction, there's more ideas flowing, and it turned out to be a great addition. So if you're entering a stage where you're going to be teaching multiple different kids, don't worry. Remember, you can do this, and remember to try out different things and just see what works, okay? Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Mama Mary Homeschool. I'm usually on stories in some capacity every single day. I hope to see you there. Bye.